You are lying in the dark. The fire has burned low. Around you, dozens of eyes have already closed. A child curls up beside their mother. Someone shifts in the dirt. Someone coughs. Beyond the circle of firelight, there is only darkness. No walls, no doors, no locks, just the night. You listen carefully. The crackling wood, the distant insects, the sound of people breathing nearby. And somewhere beyond all of that, something moves. Maybe it's an animal. Maybe it's the wind. Maybe it's nothing at all. You can't know. What you do know is that if danger appears tonight, you won't see it coming. And yet, something strange begins to happen. Your body starts letting go. Your breathing slows. Your muscles relax. Your thoughts become softer. You are about to do something incredibly risky. You are about to become unconscious. For hours. Think about how strange that really is. For almost a third of your life, you willingly switch off the one thing designed to keep you alive, your awareness. If evolution only cared about survival, sleep should never have existed. And yet every human who has ever lived has done it. Every night. For hundreds of thousands of years. Which raises a question most of us never think to ask. Not why humans sleep. Scientists are still trying to fully answer that. The stranger question is this: how did ancient humans ever feel safe enough to fall asleep in the first place? Because they didn't have bedrooms. They didn't have security systems. They didn't even have certainty that the night would remain quiet. So why would anyone close their eyes? Why would anyone stop washing? And here's the strange part. Ancient humans may have felt safer falling asleep than many people do today. Ancient humans may have felt safer falling asleep than many people do today. That sounds impossible. After all, your bedroom is probably safer than any place your ancestors ever slept. You have walls, a roof, a lock on the door. Maybe even a device in your pocket that can contact someone on the other side of the planet in seconds. Ancient humans had none of that. So how could they possibly have felt safer? You probably already have an answer. Most people do. They imagine ancient sleep as pure exhaustion. A body so tired from walking, hunting, gathering, and surviving that it simply collapsed at the end of the day. And to be fair, they probably were exhausted. But here's the strange thing: being tired and being able to sleep are not the same thing. You've probably experienced this yourself. Maybe before an important exam. Maybe before a job interview. Maybe after an argument you couldn't stop replaying in your head. Your body was exhausted. Your eyes were heavy. You wanted to sleep. But your brain refused. It kept checking, listening, thinking, waiting, as if some ancient part of you believed staying awake was more important than resting. And that's because, for most of human history, the real challenge wasn't becoming tired. The real challenge was stopping yourself from being alert. Imagine sitting beside a fire 30,000 years ago. The day is over. You've eaten. The children are asleep. The darkness beyond the firelight is impossible to see through. And your brain faces a decision: keep washing, or let go, stay alert, or become vulnerable. That decision may have been one of the most important decisions a human brain ever made. Because sleep isn't just rest. Sleep is surrender. For a few hours, you give up control. You stop monitoring the world. You stop looking for threats. You trust that if something happens, you'll wake up in time. Or at least, that someone will. Now here's where it gets interesting. What if ancient humans didn't fall asleep because danger disappeared? What if they fell asleep because danger became shared? Think about that for a moment. Most animals face the night alone. If they sleep, they sleep. If they miss a sound, they miss it. If they fail to wake up, that's the end. But humans evolved differently. Humans evolved together. And that may have changed what sleep felt like more than anything else. For most of our species' existence, sleeping alone wasn't normal. When night came, people gathered. Families, friends, children, grandparents, entire groups resting within a few feet of one another. Close enough to hear breathing. Close enough to hear movement. Close enough to know they weren't alone. And while that might sound uncomfortable to modern ears, it may have been one of the most comforting experiences a human being could have. Because safety is a strange feeling. It doesn't always come from the environment. Sometimes it comes from the people inside it. A child can fall asleep in a noisy room if a parent is nearby, but struggle to sleep in a perfectly quiet room alone. The room didn't change, the feeling did. And maybe that's exactly what our ancestors understood. Not consciously, not as a theory, but as a feeling that said, I don't have to wash everything. I don't have to hear every sound. I don't have to stay awake, because somebody else is here. But that creates another mystery. If everyone in the group was asleep, who was washing? If everyone in the group was asleep, who was washing? The obvious answer is someone took turns. A guard, a lookout, a person staying awake while everyone else slept. And sometimes that probably happened. But that's not what makes this story interesting, because researchers studying modern hunter-gatherer groups discovered something unexpected. Nobody needed to stay awake all night. And yet, somebody almost always was, not intentionally. Naturally, one person wakes up to add wood to the fire. Another rolls over and checks on a child. Someone gets up briefly. Someone else hasn't fallen asleep yet. An elder wakes before dawn. The result is surprisingly simple. At almost no point is everyone asleep at the same time, without planning it, without organizing it, without even talking about it. A group of humans becomes something remarkable, a living alarm system. Imagine that for a moment. You're lying beside the fire. Your eyes are closed. You hear someone moving nearby. A crackle from the fire. A quiet voice. A shifting blanket. Today, those sounds might seem like interruptions. Back then, they may have meant the opposite. Those sounds meant people were there. People were listening. People were awake. The night wasn't silent. The night was occupied. And suddenly something strange begins to happen. The thing we associate with safety today, silence, may not have been what made our ancestors feel safe all. In fact, complete silence might have been unsettling. Think about it. If you've ever slept alone in an unfamiliar place, you may have noticed something odd. Every sound feels suspicious. Every creak feels important. Every unexpected noise pulls you awake. But spend the night with people you trust, and those same sounds feel different. They're no longer warnings. They're reminders. Reminders that you're not alone. And this is where things change. Because the story isn't about sleep. It's about what sleep reveals. Sleep exposes something fundamental about being human. Something easy to miss because it's been with us our entire lives. Human beings are not built to feel safe alone. We admire independence. We celebrate self-sufficiency. We imagine ourselves as individuals. But for most of human history, survival was shared. Food was shared. Protection was shared. Knowledge was shared. And perhaps most surprisingly, sleep was shared too. For thousands of generations, the safest place a human could be was not inside a structure. It was inside a group, a circle of familiar faces, a network of people who knew your name, who would notice if you disappeared, who would wake if you cried out. And that's where another question appears. If humans evolved expecting that kind of nighttime security, what happens when it disappears? Because compared to our ancestors, modern life solved an incredible number of problems. Predators are gone. Most of us don't worry about rival tribes. We lock our doors. We control the temperature. We sleep on surfaces so comfortable they would seem unimaginable to people living 10,000 years ago. That should have solved everything, except millions of people struggle to sleep. And that's a strange contradiction. Because in terms of physical safety, humans have never been more protected. That many people lie awake at night anyway. Not because something is hunting them. Not because danger is outside. But because their minds refuse to stop washing, which raises a possibility that's hard to ignore. Maybe comfort and safety aren't the same thing. Maybe a soft mattress solves one problem, but not the oldest one, because somewhere deep inside your nervous system, there may still be a part of you asking a question that was once answered by a campfire surrounded by familiar people. Who's awake while I sleep? Who's awake while I sleep? Is a strange question. Most of us never ask it, because modern life seems to have removed the need. The doors are locked. The windows are closed. The neighborhood is quiet. There is nobody standing watch outside your home. Nobody feeding a fire through the night. Nobody listening for predators in the darkness. And yet, your brain may still be searching for the same answer it searched for thousands of years ago. Not consciously, not in words, but emotionally. Because here's the twist. Ancient humans probably didn't fall asleep because they felt completely safe. They probably didn't. The night was dangerous. The world was unpredictable. Bad things could happen. They knew that. Everyone knew that. What changed wasn't the danger. What changed was the responsibility. You think sleep happens when danger disappears. But for most of human history, danger never disappeared. Instead, humans discovered something more powerful. They shared it. The burden of awareness. The burden of protection. The burden of washing. And that changes the meaning of sleep completely. Sleep stops looking like a biological necessity and starts looking like a social achievement. For a lone human being, sleep is a problem. For a group, sleep becomes possible. Think about that. A sleeping tribe isn't just a collection of sleeping individuals. It's a network of trust. Each person unknowingly helping create the conditions that allow everyone else to rest. A child sleeps because adults are nearby. Adults sleep because others are nearby. Even the strongest hunter in the group closes his eyes knowing he is surrounded by people who will react if something happens. For perhaps the first time in the history of life, humans could afford vulnerability. Not because they became stronger, but because they became connected. And maybe that's why the feeling of safety is so difficult to manufacture alone. You can buy a softer mattress, a quieter room, better curtains, a more expensive bed, but none of those things can fully recreate what humans evolved with: presence. The feeling that someone else exists nearby. Someone familiar, someone trusted, someone who would notice, which may explain another strange feature of modern life. Have you ever fallen asleep accidentally, on a couch while family members were talking nearby, in the back seat of a car, on a plane surrounded by strangers, at a friend's house while people were still awake? It's oddly easy, sometimes easier than sleeping in your own bed. Because part of your brain isn't measuring comfort. It's measuring something else: connection, the quiet reassurance that the world is still being watched. But here's what makes this story even stranger. The feeling doesn't have to be real. It only has to be convincing. A familiar voice, a pet sleeping nearby, the sound of another person in the next room, even a simple bedtime ritual. These tiny details can change how safe the night feels, not because they remove danger, but because they reduce uncertainty. And uncertainty may be the thing the human brain struggles with most. Our ancestors couldn't eliminate uncertainty either. They couldn't control the weather. They couldn't predict every threat. They couldn't guarantee tomorrow. But they found something that made uncertainty easier to tolerate: each other. Which means the oldest sleep aid in human history wasn't a plant, or a medicine, or a technology. It was belonging. And once you see that, something about modern life starts to feel a little different. Because today we are surrounded by comfort that many people have never felt more alone. They have larger homes than our ancestors, more privacy than our ancestors, more personal space than our ancestors, and yet loneliness has become one of the defining experiences of modern life. This is where things become uncomfortable, because some of the things we celebrate most: independence, self-sufficiency, privacy, may also have moved us further away from the environment our brains evolved to expect after dark. Not completely, not enough to erase human nature, but enough to leave traces, little echoes, questions we don't consciously hear, questions that emerge when the lights go out, when the room becomes quiet, when there is nothing left to distract us. Questions like, am I alone? Am I safe? Can I finally stop washing? And maybe that's why falling asleep has always felt so strange. Not because sleep is a biological mystery, but because every night requires something surprisingly rare: trust. The willingness to believe that the world can continue without your attention. The willingness to surrender control. The willingness to let go, for a few hours. And perhaps that feeling, more than the fire, more than the shelter, more than the darkness, is what ancient humans were really searching for before they closed their eyes. Maybe ancient humans never expected the night to be completely safe. Maybe that was never the goal. Because for most of human history, complete safety didn't exist. There was always another sound in the darkness. Another uncertainty waiting beyond the firelight. Another reason to stay awake, and yet people slept anyway. Not because they eliminated danger, but because they no longer faced it alone. Maybe that's what falling asleep used to feel like. Not comfort. Not certainty. Not the absence of fear. Just enough trust to let go. Just enough trust to believe that if something happened, someone would hear it. Someone would wake up. Someone would still be there. And maybe that's why sleep still feels different from every other part of life. For a few hours every night, you stop controlling the world around you. You stop checking, stop planning, stop preparing. You place your awareness somewhere you cannot follow, and somehow expect to get it back in the morning. That's an extraordinary thing. Maybe more extraordinary than we realize. Because beneath the blankets, beneath the walls, beneath modern life itself, there may still be an ancient human asking the same question our ancestors asked around a fire thousands of generations ago: can I stop washing now? And perhaps the reason sleep feels so good is not because we finally get to rest, but because, for a little while, we finally get to trust. If this made you notice something you've lived with your whole life, subscribe to You Never Noticed, because the strangest parts of being human are usually hiding in plain sight. The things we call normal are often the things we've never truly looked at. And there's still a lot left to notice.